Hello. Okay, so today's show is about the real self-care and the link to chronic illness. And I am recording this from my car today just to be flexible because my ring light died on the inside. And honestly, the next best thing to the ring light is natural light. So here we are. So the reason why I want to talk about self-care and the link to chronic illness is because I believe that there needs to be a massive, massive wave of awareness around this. And awareness is one of the most powerful things that we can do for ourselves, for our bodies, and for our health. And let's go ahead and talk about why. The why is because the body is amazing. The body has an innate, miraculous, innate intelligence within it that just cannot be denied, right? It just breathes on its own. The heart pumps. When you cut yourself, you heal, right? When you have a cough, like we know that the body is getting something out of your lungs that doesn't belong there. The body has so many amazing healing mechanisms put into place for our good, and that enable the body to heal and recover on its own. So a few of those, for example, and actually a lot of them have a bad reputation, and so they are suppressed. And it ends up being that as people, as humans, we end up being emotionally repressed, mentally repressed, physically repressed, and spiritually repressed. And you can only repress so much before it manifests itself in some way. And the way that it manifests itself is via chronic illness. And so, for example, some other healing mechanisms that we know of are like if vomiting, for example, or diarrhea, that is the body protecting you from absorbing toxins that could cause illness. Okay, so that is a healing mechanism. Also, a fever is a healing mechanism. Another healing mechanism is crying. Loud crying, screaming that the body just like goes into when it's sad, especially, and kids are the best at this because kids for a really, really long time, well, I think it depends on the child, but kids, up until a certain age, they don't know to suppress themselves. And so like they're able to express themselves up into a point where they get enough messages that tell them to repress themselves, right? But up until they get enough messages that say suppress, 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 repress, 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 what you're doing is wrong, they do express themselves. They cry loudly, and they scream. And believe it or not, kids are born amazing. They're born like the most healthy. And the crying and the screaming is the most beautiful, natural healing mechanism that's put in place. So allowing that trauma cycle to complete is amazing for the body. It's amazing. And that's why a lot of times I believe by the time that we become adults and we have kids, it's excruciating. It's like hard for us to be able to be in the space with someone just so freely expressing themselves because we've spent so long repressing every single part of ourselves. So when we see somebody else not repressing some aspect of us that we have like felt ashamed of and felt guilt about, we're triggered, honestly. So it's like every time that we are triggered, it truly is an opportunity presenting itself for healing. Like that is your unconscious part of you, the part of you that you have repressed, showing itself and saying, hey, this is an opportunity for healing. So it's the same way with your body. Whenever your body is giving you a symptom, especially with chronic illness over and over and over again, it is your body saying to you and showing you, hey, you've repressed me enough. I need you to deal, accept, bring me into the light, bring this part of my body like into the light and allow me to heal. because we've done enough repressing, right? We've done so much oppressing that it's led to illness. So it's really, really powerful to understand this connection with self-care to chronic illness. And you're probably saying, like, wait a minute, why is she saying self-care? Like, what in the world does watching Netflix and wine and getting a mani-pedi have to do with chronic illness? And that is where we're going to do a little switcheroo, because I want to define self-care for you. Because the real self-care that we all should be doing in order to create real transformation or real change is to move away from the superficial idea, to move away from society's ideal self-care. Because let me tell you, one of the best things that you could do for yourself, for your body, for your health, for your family, for your future, is to completely do away with society's definitions of pretty much most things. But for this video, we will stick to self-care. But that is because that definition of self-care is superficial. And we know with superficial things, right? Like it's shallow, it's just on the surface. And if it's just on the surface, it's not going to lead to real change, right? So the reason why self-awareness is the real self-care is because if you go from decades and decades of emotionally suppressing, mentally suppressing, spiritually suppressing. Most people don't even really want to acknowledge that we have a soul or a spirit or its effect on us physically, and like want to completely deny that. After decades and decades of repressing so many parts of ourselves, it's showing up as chronic illness. It's why so many people are sick. And so I am here with a new message to redefine this, to say that when we're aware and when we can stop and sit with ourselves and no longer allow ourselves to be distracted. Because if instead of ever sitting with ourselves and starting to notice things, right? Like we work, and we go from thing to thing, and we're so busy, and busy is the norm. Which, if instead we maybe like, okay, adjusted ourselves at our desk while you're working, and we were like, oh, you know what? Oh my gosh, okay, that hurts a little bit. Oh, you know what? Oh, actually, okay, my bra strap is a little bit uncomfortable, right? That awareness is huge, and it really allows us to be in tune with our body and to say, okay, what's going on here? And maybe why does my back hurt? Because unless something was the result directly of an accident, unless you like actually had a fall and different things like that, whether you want to believe it or not, there's a direct correlation to what's going on with our inner turmoil and our physical symptoms. And pain can be directly linked to trapped emotions and all these other things that we just can't see. And so beginning to notice like, I feel like I should, get up and walk around. Like, oh, okay, let me adjust my posture, right? Is huge, rather than just ignoring, and being able to, for instance, if we have like an outburst with a child or a spouse or whatever, being able to like sit with ourselves and say, okay, well, why did I really act that way? Like, is my perception of that situation true? Does whatever your like moral standard is, personally for me, it's like, okay, well, does God feel that way? Is this how love would view this situation? Like, that's my personal standard. So, but being able to sit with ourselves and process, and it really is what leads to real change. So, for example, one thing for me is that because crying is so powerful, and once I learned how powerful it is, because the fact of the matter is, when we don't let these trauma cycles complete, let's say her name's Yvette Rose, she talks about how it leads to 5 or 6 years of psychological trauma that somebody is left with just from not letting a trauma cycle complete. And if you really think about it, it explains a lot of behaviors, a lot of patterns, and a lot of issues that we see today that people are experiencing. And understanding this has really helped me to have a lot more compassion, because even if I forget in the moment, I'm able to sit back and truly say, that is someone's trauma expressing themselves right now. Like, whether they know it or not, that is what's happening. It's simply like what's going on truly at our deepest core, trying to say, hey, this is an opportunity for healing. So this is really, really powerful, especially if you have kids and you want to completely change the trajectory of your future and your family's future, and ultimately the world, right? One person at a time, we completely change the trajectory of the planet just by how we're able to do this. So the goal and the whole link of all of this is that self-awareness allows us to bring what we need to bring to our awareness, to the surface, to our outward focus, so that we can either process, release, forgive. Because when we talk about like trapped emotions, when we talk about suppressing the body and repressing and all of those things, it's like they become so deep down that we don't even see it anymore. But because the body is so brilliant, the body comes up with all different ways to protect us kind of from ourselves, to protect us from experiencing pain, right? But it shows up in another way. It's kind of like sabotage. So for instance, so I realized that one of my things where I feel like the body was maybe trying to protect me from rejection, because my whole entire childhood, I had a really, really strong fear of rejection. And this last couple years has been me really like going through the process of healing from that fear and bringing all the stuff to light that I had suppressed down about myself. But one of the things is fear of rejection, right? So a lot of times it's like when we can feel like if we put ourselves out there, then maybe we'll get rejected. And so I realized that one of the coping mechanisms that my body had created for me, that I wasn't doing intentionally, but like, it's like when I would need to sit down to work or do something I'm really passionate about, because I am like super, super passionate about what I do and about my business. But for the longest time, I would be snacking all day long. Like, I would go down and sit to work, and it's like, okay, let me go get a snack. I go down and sit to work. Let me go get a snack. And it's like, and it wasn't intentional. I wasn't hungry. And I think at the same time, I would justify it because we keep healthy options in the house. So I'm like, this isn't like, it's not junk food. So like, what's the big deal? But I realized like I wasn't doing it on purpose, but because of what had been like suppressed within me, there was some sort of way that it was showing up in another area of my life. So understanding that and having that aha, like, oh my gosh, okay, wait a minute. Now I know why I keep having these urges. Now I know what I need to do to like heal and give my subconscious a new message so it doesn't feel like it needs to do that anymore, is so, so powerful. So please hear me and know that if you are working towards healing, the last thing we should be doing is suppressing in any way. And I'm not ever going to suggest that anybody like comes off their medication or anything. Like, that's not what I'm here for. But what I am here for is to let you know that the most beautiful, beautiful thing that you can ever do is allow all of you to be brought into the light and to love it, right? So that's just a little snippet. If you have any questions, like if you're wanting to understand a little bit more of this, hopefully that makes sense. But when we understand the connection of how our body wants to heal us, how powerful and amazing our bodies truly are, and the way that the body creates different things because it feels like it's protecting us, like that's just what the body does because of the messages that the part of us that we are probably not aware of is receiving. So for example, like pain in the body can very, 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 very well be, unless it's directly related to, like you got into a car accident, for instance. If you just have like pain every single day for, no other reason than your body is breaking down, right? You've got immune issues and all of those things. If you've got pain related to chronic illness, the pain like produces itself after our body has reached a certain threshold. And then it like overflows into the body, because the fact of the matter is that our brain is always creating these neural pathways that are either can strengthen our organs, because our brain, like especially like the vagus nerve in the brain and our nervous system in general, it's connected to every single organ in the body. And so that is sending messages to our entire body, and those messages that we send it via how we think and via how we feel are either strengthening or weakening our organs. So believe it or not, because the body is so intelligent, we could be experiencing pain, for instance, because we have felt so hurt and attacked by people in our lives. So now the body is making it so that I'm experiencing so much pain, and now I can't go out and be social. In a way, like that is the body trying to protect itself from like feeling like I'll be hurt again if I expose myself or I'm vulnerable with other people. So hopefully that made sense. If you have any questions, of course, always, I would love to do a follow-up video and I will just answer your questions. But that's just the little snapshot that I wanted to share today about the connection of the real self-care and self-awareness and how it links directly to chronic illness, which is essentially just symptoms showing up, telling ourselves you suppressed us for too long. Because symptoms aren't the real problem. Symptoms are simply like the car light on the engine. Like if I go to get my car checked, I'm not going to say, okay, take care of that button. No, I'm going to say, find out why that little light is on right now, please, and fix it at the source. So the only way that we can stop changing symptoms is to fix the issue at the source. And that is, we don't need to do all of the superficial chasing, because we just end up one step forward and two steps back. And if you've been in this situation and if you are suffering with your health, you know this. You know that you've been from diet to diet. You know that you've been from specialist to specialist. You know that you've taken this test and that test and all of the things. And you know how frustrating that process is of just chasing symptoms. So I'm here to tell you that there's new hope and there's a new solution. And it truly is understanding the beauty of the body, what it's doing to protect you in a weird way, and how to give the body the information and the communication that it needs in order to heal itself, which it is so capable of doing. So I love you all. I hope you have an amazing day, and I will be back tomorrow. Okay, have a great day, friends.